daughters away at boarding school. It's an act that just is, I mean, where's the humanity here? But just in terms of the nature of the crime itself, let's start there. And there you see, Lynn, the beautiful family and the housekeeper. But I just think the level of coordination required to do something like this, keeping people at bay, an entire family, certainly it appears as though from the night before this occurred until the house was put ablaze the day after. I think you look at that, you look at the fact that, money's being ordered from the assistant who brings $40,000 to the home. You look at thereafter, the blunt force trauma, the fact that they were all bound and they were gagged, that there was torture involved. I think it leads investigators to the conclusion of how one person could act, it could really pull this off. And I think that's what has investigators searching for more than one party here.
And you talk about how horrific this is, and you say to yourself, over $40,000, just over $40,000 these poor people tortured, and the house set on fire. And let's talk a little bit about some of the witnesses that they're speaking with. I understand one of them has changed their story.
They have, and that apparently is the assistant, Lynn, and that's the assistant, to the person who was killed. And apparently his story initially was that he got a text message from his boss indicating that the money should be forwarded and brought over to the house, and that message was gotten the same day. And then upon further questioning, he says that, he didn't tell me to bring it the same day. I got the information to bring it the night before. And then, of course, there's the indication that the assistant gave a misrepresentation in terms of what he put the money in, the color of the envelope he put it in, how it was packaged. And so it leads to either one of two conclusions. One, of course, is that the assistant is just under some state of shock and just doesn't know what he's doing because of the sheer trauma of the event. Or number two, that he's purposely misrepresenting. And you better believe, Lynn, that these people who are prosecuting this case, the United States Attorney's Office in D.C., are very motivated. They'll pull cell phone records, they'll pull, text messages, computer records, in addition to any surveillance, and there'll be a full-scale investigation. So if there were multiple parties acting, you better believe that they'll be brought to justice eventually. But just a tragic story to talk about.
No doubt about that. DNA obviously so essential here in leading police to Wendt. The pizza, that's where they found his DNA, and then the possibility that there could be more suspects. Do we know whether they've recovered any other DNA?
Amazingly enough, DNA is so critical in any investigation, and I should say there are limitations to it, but before talking about the limitations, let's talk about what it can do. Now, we know that the house was torched, and in light of that, you can have some destroying of evidence, but DNA is present on multiple things. You saw it on the pizza crust. They'll be going through that house with a fine-tooth comb to see whether there's any clothing fibers, whether there are any hair fibers, whether there's any blood, whether there's any sweat samples, in order not only to see who could be included, but to see who they can exclude from that place. And so right now we know about the pizza crust. We don't know yet, Lynn, what other information we have. We do know that in terms of DNA, there's limits as far as when the DNA was there, or how the DNA got there, or where specifically that pizza crust was found. Could he have innocently been in the neighborhood and placed the pizza crust, somewhere? And certainly defense attorneys will be looking to that. But forensic evidence, make no mistake about it, will play big into this case, in addition to the other matters that I talked about in terms of computer records, surveillance records, text phone records, everything they're going to be looking at to make sure that the person or persons face prosecution, as they well should here.
Absolutely. Joey Jackson from New York, thanks so much for being with us. You have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Lynn. Have a